Hi, this is the start of a new project that I'm working on, and it has to do with the Heartfelt creation die that I just bought. Let me move that out a little because there. Well, okay. Sorry, still getting used to all this. In my unboxing that I did earlier this week, I showed that I got the dies that go along with these stamps. I have the flower peacock that has the daisies, and I have the Paisley peacock and the feather, and they're all dies that I bought. And so what I did was, I'm not really a paper crafter. I'm still struggling. I'm still learning with paper. So I did use paper, and I did this peacock, which, although I like it, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe I'll use it on a card or an altered box. I'll have to stay tuned for that. But this time what I did was I took some very lightweight cotton fabric and I fused it onto a piece of Pellin 808 craft fuse, which is a one-sided fusible craft webbing that stabilizes fabric. So if I pick this up, you can see that it's pretty firm now. And I used Memento black ink to stamp the design. And I actually stamped it on top of my craft pad, which is just a piece of craft foam, on my ironing board. You do have to be kind of careful doing this because when you're on such a soft surface, because my ironing board has a pad on it, that any over stamping, like I have a little, trying to figure out, I have a little over black there, but I think when I use the die and cut this out, it will come off too. So I'm not sure what I'm going to make with this, but I am going to try. I have some fabric medium that supposedly changes any paint to a fabric stable paint. So I'm going to try coloring this with different mediums and then make a fabric craft item out of it. It's going to take me a little while because I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet. I may come back and show you what this looks like if the dies work when I cut this out. But the actual project is going to be a little while for me. It'll be probably a few seconds for you. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy this video. So I left off with the stamped images on my fabric and going to use the dies for the Paisley Peacock and see how well it would cut out my lightweight cotton backed by the one-sided fusible craft. And so I did, and I was incredibly impressed. These dies, I use a Big Shot, and I did use the backing off of a paper pad, the cardboard backing, as an extra shim because I wasn't confident that it would cut through everything. And I did go through several times, but as you can see, it did cut really well. There are openings that cut in the feathers, and the peacocks themselves, all of the intricate openings in the tail feathers came out pretty easily. I did have to use my needle tool and, poke some of the openings loose. And I also used my needle tool and what is really a hairbrush cleaner to clean out the die. Not much stuck in the die. And where things did stick, because I didn't use wax paper or anything, where things did stick, this took it out with no problem. Heartfelt Creations and the company that manufactures their dies, they must test it really well because every little detail opening where anything might stick, and there's a lot of little places here, any place that anything might have stuck in the die, there was one of those little pokey hole things that you could get your tool in and clean it out without any trouble. And my die, for having cut out all of those pieces, is perfectly clean now. I didn't have any trouble. So that's a 10 out of 10 for Heartfelt Creations on their die manufacturing. It was wonderful. So what was I going to do with what was I going to do with these beautiful fabric cutouts now? Well, I thought about it, and I had actually ordered a set of Posca paint pens, and I was going to use them. But then I realized that would be kind of opaque, and I didn't want to cover up all the fine detail. I mean, you could go back in with a black pen and put some of it back in, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep it kind of light. So I decided watercolors would work best. And for that, I used my Koi watercolors, which was good because in this kit, it has white watercolor. And it's pretty opaque. So there was some bleed because it's fabric and the water kind of wicks out. So I did want to go back in with white and fill in the pencils. So let me move these two pieces out of the way and I'll show you what I made. I made a Peacock tassel. See if I can get it in here where you can see it. And you can see there's the head and the actual die cut and the daisies. And I used the Koi watercolor, and I did follow it just to make sure I had enough accent with the Inktense pencils, which I have a 24-piece set, and I love Inktense. I just made sure that I hit all of the color that I put on with the pencils with some water and then dried it good with my heat tool, and it worked really well. The designs, that the sparkle that you see are some crystal bling and some little tiny pearls, and I did also go over it where you see the extra sparkle. I went over it with my Wink of Stella clear pen, and the extra shine in yellow in the center of the flowers, the sparkle, and some of the outlining on the eye, I just did with a gold glitter gel pen. The back of it is where I used this. I used one of my feathers, and I did the same treatment with the feather. It's just watercolor and Inktense pencils, and there's one gem there above the eye of the peacock feather. The yarn I used was just a baby yarn, and I made the tassel, and I wrapped it with a silver metallic DMC floss, and I loved it because when I untwisted it, it just made these strings, and that looks really pretty in this tassel. And you can see I topped it with a bead cap, and I used some feathers that I just bought at Joann's. I'll show you the feathers. I have a love-hate relationship with feathers, just like I have a love-hate relationship with glitter, because once you open the bag, they kind of go everywhere. But I had these out of my stash, and I bought them on clearance for 97 cents at Joann's. And you never know when you're going to need feathers. I use them on dolls. I've used them on, journal pages. I've used them everywhere. I kind of love feathers. And they come in all sizes, types, and colors. Now the hanger that I put on it is fire polished crystal, some bead spacers, some little silver beads, and then some oblong fire polished crystals, and just some clear, probably size, I don't know if those are actually 6s. They might be 6 seed beads. The tassel itself after I wrapped the tassel, I'd actually wrapped a kind of large acrylic bead with the fibers also, and I put it inside just so this would hold its shape better. And along with the yarn, I also used a crochet cotton, just a thread, and I didn't do as much of the thread in with the yarn, but oops, this is what the crochet cotton looks like. And I don't know if it's a number 10 maybe. It's very thin, almost, you know, thread weight. And I think it came out really pretty. Oops. I also have a multicolor crystal faceted rondelle, oops, at the top of the bead cap. So it sparkles and it shines, and it has pretty colors, and I think it looks like a peacock. So I hope that you like that. I thought it was something different, something I haven't seen anyone else do. And let me put that down, because I also showed you briefly the paper peacock that I had die cut initially. And from that, I did make an altered box. I used a paper mache heart box, and I made this cover. Well, I actually made the whole box. It's not quite finished. But on this cover, I used the Daisy Patch daisies, which are a red rubber stamp from Heartfelt Creations. And I used the coordinating die set. Now these are individual pre-cut red rubber stamps, and they stamp really well, and the die cuts are individual, and they die cut well. I mean, I did it on paper, and actually this was an old box of parchment paper, so the paper that I used for this was also different. It was parchment paper, and it's the type of parchment paper. I'm sure my mother was the church secretary, and she also was my father's secretary for his photography business. And everything that went out for billing and stuff, or for newsletters, went out on parchment paper. It wasn't regular photo printer paper. It was more like a cross between a rice paper and a photo printing paper. So that's what I used for the daisies and the peacock, because I wanted to be different. I did stamp it with Memento Tuxedo Black. Oh, no, I didn't. I actually stamped it with a white pigment ink. I think Ink It Up. And then I heat embossed it with a white glitter embossing powder. But anyway, these stamps, Emma Lou on the Heartfelt Creations website, heartfeltcreationsus.com, she has a video that says how to line these dies up with the stamped images, because you can kind of see, I think, that the cut lines for these dies are in the center, and these closed daisies are almost impossible to line up without her method, which is to die cut a template and then use the template to line up the stamp and put the die down over the template and cut that. But anyway, it's a very good video, and I recommend going out and looking at it if you haven't seen it already. Anyway, so for this cover, you can see the peacock back here, and I gave him, let me see if I can bring this up a little. He has a crystal eye, and for all these small yellow highlights, I actually used Buttercup liquid pearls. I always forget that I have this, and I've had this stuff for years and years, and it makes such pretty embellishments, and easy. You can do them in any size, and they look like flat back pearls once they dry. These larger ones are flat back acrylic pearls that I bought from an eBay seller, and I really can't remember where I got them. If I do remember, I will put it in the link, but I don't think I'm going to remember. I have them in 2 different sizes. There's probably a 8 or 10 millimeter and probably a 4 or 6 millimeter. And I enjoy using those also. You can see I did go over all of this with some distress ink in Vintage Photo and the honey one. I can never remember. I don't use distress ink very often. But anyway, I painted it with navy blue acrylic paint, True Blue, and I sanded it off a little bit, and then I went over it with an ink pad just to give it the brown distressing. The flowers that you see here are actually polymer clay flowers that I made. I made them in pink to start with because I was going to make something else. And then I made them in blue because I made earrings for my granddaughter. And, I mean, they're just little flowers out of polymer clay. And polymer clay makes very good embellishments for cards, as long as they're flat, if you're going to mail them. If they're like these flowers, you would have to hand deliver or put it in a box because they would probably crush in the mail. But anyway, so that's the blue flowers are polymer clay, and they have some of these are Swarovski crystals, flatbacks for centers, and for some of them I used the Perfect Pearls, and for even where the Swarovski crystal is, I put Perfect Pearl in it and then glued the crystal in with the Perfect Pearl medium. And that's pretty much what I did for the outside. Oh, well, I also used a Chinese braid. I trimmed it with a small Chinese braid. And it was an ivory color, and I went over it a little bit with the brown distress ink just to make it fit with the cover. The glue I used to put the Chinese braid on is this Fabric Tack. For fabric application, Fabric Tack works the best. I've used it for dolls to fix hems, to attach things that couldn't be sewn, and everything holds really well. Hot glue, I'm always afraid if it goes to a hot climate, the hot glue has a temperature range, and once you exceed its range, it's going to loosen up and become soft, and the items have a tendency to fall off. And if it gets too cold or old, sometimes it gets brittle and things fall off. So I always feel better with a wet glue. And I used the Art Glitter Dries Clear Glue for the paper application. The inside of the box, I just took some of the distress ink from the ink pad, and I just kind of made it look old and distressed. The bottom of the box, I did the same process too. I painted it navy blue and distressed it and hit it with some brown. I used one of the Peacock Paisley background stamps, and I just made a embellishment for the bottom. It does have some Perfect Pearls in there, and it has some of the flat back acrylic pearls. On the side, I just did a narrow band from an 8x8 sheet of paper that you probably can't see, but on one side, the bottom of the box, it says Memories, because I figured this would make a good treasures box. And I just distressed the whole thing with Vintage Photo ink, and then I took a Stabilo black pencil and I just, put an additional dark line at the top of the paper. I haven't, like I said, I haven't finished this yet. I don't know if I'll do more to the inside, but I will. I'm sorry for any glare. I will take and put a piece of felt on the bottom and some small legs of some sort. just to finish it. But I think that was kind of an interesting finish for that piece too. Oh, the doily on the back is just a heart-shaped paper doily that I stained with Vintage Photo. And I think I also sprayed this with a little bit of coffee water to move the distress ink around. Now to finish this, I'll give it a light spray, all of it, the box, the top, the inside, the whole thing, with the Krylon workable fixative. I finish everything with that because if I think I'm finished but I want to go back and add more to it, the workable fixative allows you to go back and work on it without disturbing anything underneath it. And if I finish it like that, it's like a varnish that doesn't yellow. And I use it on, like when I paint with colored pencils or acrylic paints or watercolors or paint pens. If I do a doll's face, I'll use the workable fixative to fix that so it doesn't move. The only thing I've had a problem with is like a red gel pen. That may bleed. You have to really be careful that you do a light dusting and let it dry before you go back in and you really seal it, because you don't want, there's always the potential that something will bleed. So you want to make sure that you do a light film, let it set, and then go back in and finish it. Because I'm sure that with this distress ink, that has a potential to happen. On this, it might not matter, although I don't want it to bleed any further into my daisies. But it's always a thought to keep at the back of your mind. So I hope that you've enjoyed these videos. I'm going to try to put the two segments together. I don't know that they will go together, so it may be a part 1 and a part 2. But I really hope that you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed making these items. I am really happy the Heartfelt Creations put these stamps and dies out. I've enjoyed working with them. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I'm new to this. I'm still trying to figure it all out. It's probably going to take me a while. But I hope you have a very happy, healthy day and do something you enjoy and smile at the people you meet. It might be the only bright spot of their day. Have a good one. Bye.